Okay, good morning. We're up to Siman Kuf Ayin, Halacha Yud Ches. Let's try and finish off the Siman today. Just finishing off the halachas, Dvarim Hanogim B'Seuda, some very interesting halachas. Says the Mechaber in Yud Ches, Hanichnas L'Seuda, a person goes to a meal, Lo Yikach Chelkoi V'Yidnenu L'Shamash. He shouldn't give his portion, his plate of food, and give it to the shamas. Shema Ye'er Adova Kilkul B'Seuda, because it might cause some upset in the meal. You rather take it and then afterwards give it to him. So what does that mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah Sivkot Lametes, Lo Yikach Chelkoi. Habach Pirush Hatam. The Bach explains what's going on as follows: Shenira Shechelkoi Bezuya Be'enov. Because if you receive this plate of food and you immediately give it away to the shamas who's serving, the waiter who's serving, V'lo chafetz ba or masul shamas, you don't want it and you give it away to the shamas. V'lo chen yanichen lefonov. It will cause upset because it looks like you don't want his food. Therefore, better leave it in front of you. To marish mekabel be'enov, it looks like you're accepting the plate of food. And then you decide not to eat it, and then later, subtly, if you like, you give it to the shamash, and therefore avoid any upsets. Because it could get to some sort of argument between the host and the guest. Why are you eating my food, etc.? Well, the Levush explains slightly differently, according to the simple explanation. You shouldn't give it immediately to the shamash. Because he's suddenly got a plate of food, he's now got to divide up that plate, and that might cause a bit of a discussion. I want that piece, and better to avoid that. Better to leave it until after the meal, and then you give it to the shamash. Therefore, this only applies until after each person has got their plate of food. Another side point, that when you make a meal, you, the balabayas, should actually pour drinks for your guests. Okay, says the Mechaber in Yutes. Guests come and eat in someone's home. You can't take the food that you're given as a guest and give it to the child of the host, or to his worker, unless you ask permission beforehand. So why not? What's the problem? So says the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot Mem, Hu takonos chachomim. This is an old takon of the chachomim, based on a certain incident that happened, which is recorded in the Gemara in Chulin. There was a person who invited guests in a time of famine, so there wasn't a lot of food around. All the food he had was 3 eggs. So there were 3 guests, and all the food was 3 eggs. The son of the balabais came. One of the 3 guests, each one gets an egg, and one of the guests gives it to the son of the balabais. And lo and behold, the second and the third guests all give their portion, their egg, to the son of the balabais. So the father of this child comes. He's got 1 egg in his mouth and he's got 2 in his hands, eating the entire contents of the suda. And he sort of hit him, and Nebuch, the kid, died. When the mother saw this tragedy, she went onto the roof and jumped and died. There was a tragedy where 3 people were killed. And based on that, you shouldn't give anything without permission to the kids. Now, the dafka b'chiyai gavna. So therefore it's only limited to situations where there is very little food around, and the balabais will be embarrassed if you give of that limited food to the son or the worker of the balabais. But if there's plenty of food on the table, that we're not going to run short, you're allowed to give it to the kids of the balabais or to the avodim, etc. Well, if he's there, kol shekenim kvar kilu lechol v'dishtai, and certainly, therefore, if they're finished eating and we're talking about leftover food, then there's no problem. You can give leftovers to the kids or to the workers. He sort of scoffs at people who are machmir about this because it's unnecessary. But to give to the waiter, that's okay. Even that is also. If you look at 31, he says, Dafka mona chashuva. What can't you give? What is this halacha talking about? Dafka a chashuv item. Maybe the balabais will need it, like a piece of meat or something like that. Avodava mu'at could go pre, like a fruit or something like that. Kosova kafachaim she'ein loch Hashem yove balabais lidei busha. V'afroi v'hogan losses lidei leyalde balabais yelade chaver ki marbe b'ze'av v'shamres. On the contrary, you give the kid a bit of fruit or a bit of something that creates av of yachvo around the table. And that is the goal. Okay, Chof. Nikiyei hadas sheb'Yerushalayim. That means lofty people in Yerushalayim. Lo hayu mesubim besuda elim ken yodim mi meisiv imohem. They would only accept an invitation to a suda if they knew who was going to be there. Why? It's a gnai, it's sort of a disparaging for a Talmud Chacham to sit with an Amoritz at a suda. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Afilu besudas mitzvah. Okay, and ein behalacha. Now let's do this behalacha. Very interesting behalacha. Can you see where it says lo hayu mesubin in the behalacha? Ayin b'mishnah brura b'shem achronim. V'huna ve'er miseifer matzah Moshe. The source of this halacha, not for Talmud Chacham, not sitting with an Amoritz, the source is brought in the matzah Moshe. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Chaim in behalacha v'lo yodaiti makora. I don't know the source for this. V'gam in ha'ilim nizharim b'zeh klal, and I don't see people careful about this. Or me'ashas sheli perek ketzad mevarchin. Then in brachas and ketzad mevarchin isasham dilma osalim shuchi basra. You may come to be sort of you follow their ways, the Amoritz's ways. Gam kein in rai klal. That's not really a rai. The efshesh lo shaykh el besudas rishus. That's only talking about a regular meal. Mashengi besudas sheishal mitzvah and not a sudas mitzvah. On the contrary, mitzvah beidnet osigba megani. If you're involved in a mitzvah, that will protect. Or matzli min chait. Venerally, and it appears to me, says the Chaim, on the contrary, if there is a benefit of the Talmud Chacham being at this meal, it's, that on the contrary, it will be more of a chashuv meal if the Talmud Chacham is there and can influence it. There's no problem. And furthermore, sitting with Amaratzim, i.e. you're on the rabbi's table, at the wedding or whatever it is, it's also, that's not a problem because you're sitting with other chashuv people. Or if there's a separate seat, you're not with people who are going to sort of may influence, and therefore you're sitting as a wherever it be, on the top table or somewhere which is aside from everything, therefore less lumbar. So the Bir Halacha seems to say we're not really worried about this nowadays. Okay. Chof Aleph. Hashamish meshamish al shnayim. If the shamis, the waiter, is serving two people, harizeh oichel imohem, he's allowed to eat with them, even though those two did not give him rishus, because that way they've got a zimun. Meshamish al shleisha. However, if he's serving three people, ein oichel imohem elemkein nosn rishus, because they don't need him. They've already got their zimun. Says the Mishnah Berurah Mem Gimel. They would give a little bit of food to the waiter, that two people will be willing to give some of their food, that the waiter will join them and they've got a zimun. Of course, if you're eating something which doesn't allow him to join the zimun, then that doesn't work. If so too, if there were 9 people together, why? The they can you say Elokeinu in the zimun, same svara. Okay, lastly, Chof Beis. Final sort of eating etiquette. After you drink and there's a bit of wine left over in your glass, for your friend to drink, wipe the area where you drank from. Don't pour it out because it's a waste of wine. But if there's water in the case, then you can just pour a bit of the water and that will wash away the place where you drank from. Says the Ramah, after you finished eating, you should always have a bit of salt. And after you finish drinking, wash it down with some water. Venerally, the that's only if there was no salt in the food that you ate. Or there was no liquid water in the drinks that you had. But without that, there's no problem. So nowadays, there's salt in all the food, and therefore it's not a concern. And you have Coke or orange juice or whatever it is, there's water, of course, in there. So again, there's no concern. Let's just do the Mishnah Berurah. Kaneach mokum ayin le'el b'siman tezayim mashe kasavnu sham Mishnah Berurah. Okay, derech sham k'dei lishtef haroik shenaga derech sham, to wipe away any saliva. Now, just a few tips from the Mishnah Berurah, final points. V'ayim mashe kasavnu lekamon b'siman reish lamed aleph minyoni achila. A few other tips about eating. Yizohem ma'oid shlelechol leiv behema chaya v'oif. You've got to be careful to avoid eating the heart of a behema, a chaya, or an oif, because it's kosher l'shikcha. Interestingly, in 34, he says, Noshim, the Chavas Da'as says, Yecholis lechol the leiv. They can eat the heart of the animal. Why? Because in shikcha nema rak l'gabi zecharim. This concept of kosher l'shikcha, people might forget their learning. That's only applicable to men, not to women. And therefore, women could eat the leiv of the animal. It's got to be, it's hard to do malicha, but you can do it. Kosav al yirab b'shem shla, yetziv libay b'sudas. A person should eat in good spirit, im ma'atim harbe, whether it's a little or a lot. Yechel pitay b'simcha, eat his bread b'simcha. Yechel atoiv v'moyel le'lefu, because if a person eats well, that's good for his health. V'lo mashe orev le'lefisha. He should eat healthily and not what is sweet. Right, having a good healthy diet. Don't sleep, too soon after you've eaten. You should wait a little bit. And the Rambam in Hilchos Deis in Perek Vav tells you all the laws about how to how to eat, what, when, etc. The Shla cautions, as does the Rambam there, that not to overeat. One of the a major concern, certainly nowadays in our 21st century. A person should eat in order to serve Hashem. And therefore, it turns out all of his sudas are sudas mitzvahs. Let's just do the last paragraph in 35. Very interesting thing. A person who wants to get a kapara, kasav l'kaman in Tov Kuf Ayin Aleph b'shem Sifrei Musa, he's got a plate of food and he leaves a little bit over, and he doesn't finish everything on his plate, and he wants it. That's considered a very powerful form of being mischap avanesov. It's not easy to do. You've got a nice piece of kigel or whatever it is to leave it a little bit over. So Bal Tashchis is only if there's no reason why you're doing it.
You can throw it out.
Yeah, but you're doing it for a reason. Bal Tashchis means there's wanton destruction. I'm destroying for no reason. But if I'm doing it as a kapara, etc., and I'm self-restrained, someone told me they once asked a certain Rav, is there Bal Tashchis? I'm full, and I've got some food left over on my plate. Is there a problem with Bal Tashchis? So he says, Bal Tashchis of the goof is also Bal Tashchis. For you, dafka, to eat, because, okay, say that, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.